Hi, everybody. It's Mary Esther, Tiffany, and we have Marjorie Morales and Erika Vick with us today. We're going to talk about their experience with computer science and what they do currently in their careers. And we're going to take you back through when they were in college. So we have a whole realm of things to talk about with this video today. So thank you both for joining us today. We're really excited to have you. And I'm going to start off just asking y'all to describe what it is you do in your current role. And Marjorie, maybe we could start with you.
Hello, Mary Esther and everybody else. I work for UT Southwestern and I manage a team of analysts. And what we work on is using the data from the hospital and doing analysis on the data to try to find ways to improve or try and find opportunities in areas that we are doing really well or areas that we need to focus on. And we report to the government. Also, we report to the hospital our data. And for example, with COVID-19, we were able to help with a lot of the analysis on the patients and as far as what patients were coming in, what areas we needed to focus on.
Great. I'm curious, Marjorie, what is going on there now with the COVID situation? Has that changed a lot of what you do, or is it still pretty much the same?
The biggest difference for us is that we have to do a lot more reporting to the government as far as city, county, state, and federal. But we changed a lot of the processes at the hospital. Like you've seen on the television, everybody has to wear PPE and we have to remove things. My team all went to work from home immediately. They sent us home, and because of the work we do and being analysts, and all we really need is a computer and the data, access to the data, we can do our job from anywhere. That is one of the things that I've always told people about being a computer science person, is that you can pretty much work from anywhere. I have lived across the United States, been working on different projects, and sometimes I never even saw the people I was working with other than through phone conferences or video conferences.
Thank you. So Erika, tell us about you.
I'm with the Office of Communications at NASA headquarters. I've been with NASA for 30 years now. Was from Houston originally, which is how I ended up going to UT. So in Office of Communications, what I'm doing with computer science, I guess just one thing that I found was really awesome about having a computer science degree was that it allowed me to, by meeting the requirements, by figuring out how to make the software system, whatever it was that I was working on at the time, meet the requirements of the user community, I was able to gain skills in what NASA was actually doing. And so I've kind of, in some cases, I was a coder, I was a database administrator, and then I moved over into actually manifesting payloads on the space shuttle and that sort of thing, because I knew how they tracked that information. But as I mentioned, I'm in the Office of Communications now, and as far as the two data systems that I use and maintain, one of them is SharePoint, and that's business application, calendar tracking of all of the major events that NASA wants to make sure that we're doing, full court press. So for example, for the commercial crew launch that we had this past weekend, that everybody's on board, knows what everybody's doing. And then there's another tool that I maintain, and that is a traditional media monitoring tool. So while I'm not writing code anymore, I still am, involved in understanding what the organization's requirements are and figuring out how to make the system support those.
What brought y'all together and how your college years were?
So Eric and I were freshman year roommates. We had never met each other. When I applied to go to UT, I didn't know anything about UT other than what I'd learned through summer camp or summer orientation? And I did not know anybody that was going. So when I showed up my first day, it's the first time I ever met Erika. And so we became really good friends immediately, and we were both computer science majors. So again, that was not planned. and we just worked in labs together and did quite a few things together throughout the years.
I didn't know anything about computers. We had not, I don't know that there was a computer class where I went to school. And so the reason why I picked computer science was because I was pretty sure that while I always enjoyed math, I was pretty sure that I wouldn't be able to handle the engineering, and computer science was pretty new at the time, really new. I mean, we were still using punch cards, and PCs were just starting to show up, and there was Marjorie writing code, lines and lines of code. And so she knew what she was doing, and she really helped usher me in to the environment. And yeah, so we were, didn't know each other, were friends or roommates at Jester, and it just worked out really well.
The reason I knew more about coding was when I was in El Paso, I signed up for one of the tech, I don't know what they call them, but they were tech programs for kids that weren't going to go to school, going to go to college. And I signed up and asked for they called them data processing and computer operators. And I went and I asked the instructors in that school, if I sign up and do all my classwork and learn how to load up a computer and run them for a company, will you teach me how to code? And so that's how I started working. It wasn't so much that they offered computer science classes in my high school. It was because I went and found a place that where there were people that knew how to code.
You were a proctor, right? Wasn't that what it was called, a proctor?
Well, they call them computer operators. Basically, you work for a big company and you load up all their cards, and you would load them up, or you would run their reel to reel. So this was a tech school, and they were teaching people how to do that. And so I went and talked to them, and they said, we can work with you along the way. So 3 hours out of the day, I worked with kids that weren't going to college. Again, we worked with punch cards. We had two different versions, the 80 column cards, and then we had these little bitty ones. I think they were called 96s or something like that. I don't remember anymore.
Was there anything in your childhood that encouraged you both to study technology?
For me, yes. When I saw man land on the moon back in 1969, I told my dad that I wanted to go work for NASA. And he basically told me, if you want to work for NASA, you're going to, being a Mexican-American female, you're going to have to work a lot harder. And so he told me, never take no for an answer, but always ask for a solution. And that's what I basically did. And that's how I found my path in through certain programs, was when somebody would tell me, no, you can't do that, I would say, okay, then what can I do? How can I figure this out? And that led me all the way through high school and to UT.
Computer science sounded like it was the wave of the future. And it sounded like it would be, if I could get through it, because I, again, really didn't know much about it, that, it would be something that I could rely on to have a good career. And it certainly has been, and still is. I mean, even more so. Working for NASA now, while I may not be the hands-on like Marjorie is so much anymore, I'm just amazed at what I see NASA doing with the data. I mean, the more data that they can process, the better we can assess how our planet is doing, for example. And I think you guys asked a question, what is one of the things that you've seen in your career that you've been most impressed by? And I would say that one of the things I saw, and I want to say this was last summer, maybe during hurricane season, well, they have missions now where they can collect so much data from these missions that they can look at a storm in 3D and interpret it, based on that 3D view. So, we're going to need people to be able to understand how to maximize the efficiency of bandwidths, because there's so much data and will be that much more data.
Well, Marjorie, will you answer that question? What's one of the most exciting things you've seen in technology during your career?
Well, there have been many, many different phases for me, just because I've worked in different areas. When I was in Texas Instruments in the late 80s and early 90s, just seeing all the things that are on your cell phone, we were working on that technology in the research center there. And it was very, very interesting because everything that you see on your cell phone, every single app was a separate piece of hardware. And the research center had about 80 or so PhDs, and they were all working on separate, like speech recognition, handwriting recognition, 3D displays, but they were actually creating the tools to create these things. So the object-oriented databases, we were working on that kind of technology. So when the cell phone came out, when Apple finally produced their iPhone, I remember a group of the kids that were kids back then calling each other saying, this is what we were looking at back then. So to see that cell phone have all those things that we looked at back 20 years ago is amazing.
Erika, what has been one of your greatest work accomplishments?
How do you organize, how to address the problem, to answer the whatever the various questions are? And so I took that, I guess, skill set that I learned as being in computer science and applied it to when we were flying payloads like scientific research on the space shuttle and looking for nooks and crannies to put them. You know, I basically came up with a way to organize the requirements so that we maxed out as much as we possibly could. And so I would say that's certainly something that I'm proud of, to have been able to contribute to scientific advancement, you know, that the space program has been able to support.
As high school students are thinking about pursuing computer science, there are now so many different directions they can go. Do you have some advice on really exciting upcoming areas that they should consider, or how should they make that decision?
Again, I'm gonna put the space program hat on because I wear it all the time. Robotics, I would say. Robotics is something that obviously NASA relies on, because so far we can only send people to low Earth orbit. And so fortunately we have evolving robotics technology that allow us to have machines do as much as they can until we can get there and help them out. So I would definitely encourage at least considering a class or two in robotics. And also, as I mentioned before, I think the reason why, or one of the reasons why technology is advancing as much as we can, Marjorie mentioned it, I think it was the Apollo program, what it took to run the capsule, the crew capsule, the computer capability was less than what we have in a cell phone now. And so you just, you know, think that technology will continue to advance. So you just need to be thinking about what, if you're interested in the hardware aspect of it, again, data storage. We're going to be collecting more and more data. We're going to need to have ways to be able to store it efficiently and transmit it. So those are a few thoughts.
And I am also going to go with robotics and with analytics. I think as far as machine learning, and several reasons for that, but the robotics from the healthcare industry, and I'm going to speak, I wish I could speak about from the NASA perspective, but I don't work there anymore. From the healthcare industry, when you look at the opportunities in robotics, what you think about small rural towns, and they don't have qualified surgeons that work there. There just aren't enough surgeons to be around the world for when they're needed. If you can have these robots that can do surgery, and you have the actual surgeon in the big city, he or she can work on a patient from virtually. And then you just have a clinical staff at the rural hospital making sure the robot's doing what it needs to do. I've seen some of that as far as some initial works on it, and I'm just amazed by how much you can do having a robot help you. And the other part is the analytics part. As Erika mentioned earlier, we have so much data, and getting through it is a lot of work. We need the hardware and we need the bandwidth. We also need the people that are knowledgeable to understand the data. Don't just let the computer do everything. As a human, you have to be involved to understand, yes, that is possible. No, that's not possible. But in healthcare, we use analytics to do several things. And one of the bigger things that we're looking at these days is how to look at a problem before it happens. If a patient walks into the hospital, look to see what's the probability of that patient getting an infection, or what's the probability of that patient suffering from a different disease once they leave here, by understanding their background, understanding all the risk factors in the community. And so there's just an opportunity to use data for so many different areas in the hospital.
One field that I hear people talking about more, or one of the career paths that people can take, is data scientist. Do your companies employ people that are specifically calling themselves data scientists?
I actually have a data scientist. She has a PhD in statistics, and she helps analyze using the data that we have, looking at patient experience and looking at how a visit happens through the hospital as far as the patient's going through. I'm about to hire another data scientist who happens to have a medical degree from China. So yes, there are a lot of opportunities in data science. Data science with analytics, I think, makes a really good combination.
I guess I haven't heard that term, but I have no doubt that NASA does, just because we pretty much have opportunities for everybody. So I'm sure the answer is yes.
Erika, why was this recent partnership with SpaceX such a big deal? Because I know we've been sending people to the International Space Station for a while. And so what is the future of NASA as far as private partnerships?
Private partnerships is huge. This administration has been, and the previous administration just realized that we need to get the cost of going to space down in order for us to do bigger missions like sending humans to Mars. And we've had permanent human presence on space station for 25 years this year. And it was 11 years ago that we sent our last space shuttle mission. So that was 9 years ago, the last time that American astronauts, or astronauts in general, flew to the International Space Station from US soil. So basically we've had to rely on the Russians to get us there, and that comes at a premium. We're thrilled to have SpaceX as a partner. I don't know if you've had a chance to see, so the shuttle would come back like a plane. The SpaceX, the Crew Dragon my understanding, is gonna splash down just like we did during Apollo. But during Apollo, the rocket would fall back and crash into the ocean, and I guess that was the end of it. Whereas Elon has set it up so that his rockets actually come back and land on a carrier. If you have not seen this, you must. It is so cool. Public-private partnerships are something that is very important to the government. And actually something that I wanted to mention, one of the things that I am very proud of that NASA does is there are a ton of opportunities for people to get involved in NASA missions and actually contribute to them, even if they're not NASA employees, that could then potentially lead to careers in space or with NASA or their partners. So if your First Bytes community thinks that space is cool, and I pretty much don't know anybody that doesn't think space is cool. For all ages, you know, really, lots of opportunities. NASA Solve is a good place to go look.
Marjorie, one question for you. You've done more than volunteer for First Bytes for many years. A few years ago, you also created an endowment to help fund scholarships to give scholarships to students who have attended First Bytes, and we're so grateful for that. Why was this important to you?
As I mentioned before, my path to UT was not always so easy. I knew how to get there. I just didn't know how to actually pay for it. And so there was a lot of generosity in different people, alumni that set up different scholarships. And I was able to get a scholarship, an academic scholarship while I was there. And I also worked while I was at UT. And so I always thought that if I had enough money and made enough money along the way, that I would want to come back and help fund somebody else to go to school. So when I went back and started getting involved with First Bytes, I saw an opportunity to help out. And by creating an endowment that would fund scholarships, I thought, well, this is even a better solution than just donating money, to create a perpetual endowment to help other students that want to get involved with the camp. Once they go through the camp, then if they decide to pick UTCS, they can apply for the scholarship and help fund some of their education, especially in today's world where education is quite expensive. I think every little bit helps.
Thank you.
Marjorie bleeds orange.
Most definitely.
Oh, I know.
Knows. It helps with my wardrobe. I don't have to make very many decisions. Everything matches orange. It doesn't really matter.
I want to thank you both for joining us today and sharing your perspective on computer science, as I know you keep in touch with each other. So it was really a pleasure for us to be able to talk to you today and hear what you do and how you got there.
Thank you. It's always great to catch up. Hook 'em horns. Everybody, please sign up. We're ready for you.